Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Driven Wyld. Today we are talking about NYC poll claims food delivery apps cheating workers out of tips in retaliation for wage hike. So as a lot of us know, New York implemented some new laws against the food delivery apps such as Doordash UberEats and Grubhub to where they have to implement a minimum wage. This caused the gig apps to have to reevaluate how they do things in that city, one of which was to take away upfront tipping, and I believe we all know that did not turn out well for gig workers at all. So with that said, we are talking about everything that is being said in this article, how it actually is for Doordash, UberEats, and Grubhub drivers and customers, and everything in between. So with that said, let's get started. Hate having tip options shoved in your face? Too bad, says a city council member. Okay, why is that the way we're going about this? We are literally opening this article up with everything's wrong with tipping culture. Get used to it. Like, I can literally tell that the writer of this article, Haley Brown, I would not want to work with them personally. And either way, it doesn't take away from the natural problem of the gig apps took away upfront tipping, which I assume is the entire point of this article based on the headline, but you guys are making it sound like fighting for us to be paid the way we're supposed to is a bad thing. Shauna Brew, D. Manhattan, introduced a bill that will force delivery apps to put tip options front and center when you order, with a 10% as the default. So it's not shoving a 20% tip option right in your face, it's a 10% tip option when you order on Doordash, UberEats, and Grubhub. Literally making sure that we're being paid the way we're supposed to be paid. Because what was happening was people were working in the New York City area and they would receive their order and they just wouldn't be tipped, which was worse, inherently worse than the way it was prior, where people were making much more than the minimum wage that was set. And even still, 10% isn't all that much, to be perfectly honest. I still say 20% is a natural default, at least for me. 10% is literally half of that. And all of the no-tip commenters are gonna be like,
Ugh, I don't think I should tip my driver. I don't tip my driver until after the service. Get a real job.
Meanwhile, those people are proving time and time again that tipping is not happening after service. You're lying through your teeth. You always have lied and you always will lie. So how about instead of saying get a real job, you just get a real life? All we're asking for in this legislation is for the tipping option to return to what it used to be. More people are inclined to tip if they see the option prior to getting their meal. Once they have their meal, they're tapped out, a Brew told the Post. Exactly. And you know what? That's just a fact across the board. Think about it like this. There are so many people online right now that are crying about being asked to tip at a coffee shop. And you know what? Whether or not you tip at a coffee shop is your choice, but they're swiping their card, right? And they're being asked if they want to tip, regardless of how they frame it or otherwise. Whether it's, oh, the screw's gonna ask you a few questions or whatever, and I would roll my eyes at that. I would rather them ask me that there than have them have me swipe the card again, because that just makes no sense. A lot of people still don't carry cash on them anymore. So that whole cash tip argument is just as invalid as every other point that they pretend to have. A Brew said after the city boosted wages for delivery workers this month, apps changed their procedures in retaliation, making it more difficult for consumers to tip the drivers. Okay, first off, making it more difficult for consumers to tip the drivers is an understatement. They didn't want to tip at all. The fact of the matter is you were trying to have those customers who were ordering served regardless. The drivers that would normally cherry pick and normally would make more money not dealing with those customers suddenly had to, because they couldn't tell the difference between everybody otherwise. But the fact of the matter is those customers were just as much of a problem now as they were back then. That part has always been the case. It's very rare when people tip after service. In fact, I remember remember making a video about one customer who was shocked when they saw this and outright scrambled to find a $10 bill to give to their driver. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I made a video talking all about that. I will leave that in the description. Feel free to check that out. For instance, DoorDash and Uber Eats removed the tip option until after the customer receives their order, while Grubhub, which also encompasses Seamless, lowered the default rate of tipping being displayed. It's amazing how Grubhub, the more transparent of the three, did the least amount of damage in this regard. Why haven't they grown more? I'm a little annoyed that DoorDash is that much bigger than Grubhub, to be honest. We see this as an equity issue. Delivery workers are working really hard to bring us our food, and we want to bring the power back to consumers to decide if they want to tip, Abreu said. Also, it gives us a chance as drivers to determine whether or not we want to work with them, period. This would literally reincarnate no tip, no trip in New York City. Do you understand how valuable that would be? Like, I'm not a fan of how they instill like an hourly minimum in New York City. I would have preferred a base minimum. But in this case, this has been more beneficial long-term than it has been anything else. He estimated the city's nearly 60,000 food delivery workers could collectively make $9 million in annual tips under 2 bills. Can you imagine how much more money that would be for all parties involved in NYC, regardless of all of the taxes involved, which I will stand by you in that regard, the taxes that are incurred onto the average gig worker in NYC, it's ridiculous between the federal, state, and city. I will fight alongside you to repeal that, but either way, it actually seems kind of lowball because, quite honestly, I feel like you can have so much more money coming through. There was a reason why people who were in NYC, once this bill got passed, started commuting to places like Jersey City, Westchester County, Long Island. I hope Long Island didn't get affected by that. Jesus. A spokesperson for Uber told the Post that tipping should be a reward. Uber is so funny about this because they will develop a system where tipping is literally the only thing that makes an order worth it, but then when it's convenient for them, it's a reward. If it's really supposed to be a reward, then pay your drivers better. Pick a lane and stick with it. Don't be so wishy-washy with the way you are. Like, seriously. Tipping is intended to be a reward for excellent service after services provided. App workers in New York City already make a minimum of $19.56 per hour, and customers have the option to tip their delivery worker on every order, Josh Gold said in a statement. Okay, but here's the reality. Those customers who say they're gonna tip after never actually do, and that's been proven time and time again. Second, already make a minimum of $19.56 per hour. No, that's $19.56 per active hour. Get the facts right. And here's the reality. Excellent service is not even a factor here because what do you expect us to do? We pick up food and deliver it, whether it's contactless or hand it to you. What do you expect us to do? Set the table for you, feed you like a child, make your table for you? These are the most entitled people saying crap like this. A DoorDash spokesperson said the minimum wage adds costs that gets passed on to customers who order less delivery food as a result. The city's blind focus on over-regulating a single industry has already made costs skyrocket for customers, and orders drop for local restaurants across the 5 boroughs, the rep said in a statement. Ugh, you're gonna make me agree with DoorDash now?
Oh great, the fucking supremacist is on my side. Wonderful.
Here's the reality. A lot of people think,
Raise the minimum wage! Raise the minimum wage!
and what they think is that raising of the minimum wage is going to come out of the CEO's pocket. In my opinion, that is the real intention behind it. It's not about you getting more money. It's about you taking from other people. Because if it was about you making more money, you'd be looking into other opportunities that actually pay more money. So many people want to complain about their situation, but they don't want to actually do anything about it. But we're getting a little off topic with that. The fact of the matter is the way you've been been over-regulating these companies. I agree that there does need to be levels of regulation on the subject, don't get me wrong, but you're trying to implement a employee solution to an independent contractor problem. So maybe instead of you trying to use that blind focus to force us into an employee mindset, you actually focus on the problem of the independent contractor or keep your goddamn nose out of it. Although in this case, this would end up benefiting drivers, but it's putting a band-aid on a much bigger problem. They had suggested platforms like us could make changes to tipping based on this extreme policy, but now want to go even further in their overreach. It does seem like overall NYC has literally caused such a massive issue with their overreach issues, putting their hands in things that they definitely shouldn't have. And that's just an overall issue. The city on April 1st announced it would be boosting the minimum pay rate for food delivery workers by around $1.50 every hour to $19.56 per hour starting on April 1st, 2025. April Fool's Day or what, huh? This whole thing seems like a joke. It came after a September 2021 law ordered the City Department of Consumer Worker Protection to review pay and working conditions for food delivery workers. The department decided last year to set a $17.96 hourly wage from the prior rate of $7.09 an hour on average. $7.09 an hour on average is not even close to what they were actually making. You see, DoorDash in New York City have the same issue. DoorDash will claim that
our drivers are making up to $25 per active hour on average.
Meanwhile, they're including tips, they're including base pay, and they're saying active hour as opposed to total time. Whereas New York City is only accounting for base pay, which $7.09 in base pay with DoorDash, UberEats, and Grubhub, let's say even if it was $2 per base pay, that means there are 3 or 4 opportunities an hour roughly to have quality tips in there. Let's say it's $5 per tip, it's probably more realistically. You're talking $27 plus an hour, assuming that that rate is actually accurate. Although we're not talking about that, we just want to paint an image to make a company look bad, right? But a brew noted that workers only get paid for the active time they work, from the moment you pick up the delivery to the time you drop it off. Sounds like this Brew guy actually knows what they're talking about, as opposed to all the other politicians that have the understanding of technology of
Does TikTok connect to the home Wi-Fi network?
A lot of apps are spreading misinformation and saying delivery workers get paid by the hour. It's not by the hour. It's for time worked. When they're waiting for an order, they're not getting paid for the wait time, a brew said. That's also slightly accurate, although more on track. They're getting paid per gig for the work they do, for the miles they're driving. It depends on the gig. And we're working with tips here, so we need to be paid properly for the amount of work we're putting in. So a brew did the right thing. He pointed out the truth here. That only applies to New York City. So time worked is absolutely true for New York City. It's true for Seattle because they have implemented a similar system, but it's not true for the complete gig economy. So technically right, specifically city level, but technically right. The apps have flexibility on how they pay the workers per trip or per hour, as long as their workers make the minimum rate on average. To ensure enforcement, the city requires app-based food delivery companies to report statistics on numbers of workers and deliveries to the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. A brew's proposal will head to the Committee on Consumer and Worker Protection. The chair of that committee, Councilmember Julie Menon, is co-prime sponsor of both bills. This is my opinion. It's worth what you pay for it. None of you pay me. There you go. I am not a fan of the laws that have already been implemented on the gig apps. But I think this law would be a positive one for gig workers in that general area. Whether or not it's actually good is a different conversation entirely. I feel if you're going to have this implemented, right? You should make sure, beyond a shadow of a doubt, by the way, that you do implement on them cannot be factored into the pay they already pay their drivers. The way they operate is that they like to combine the base pay and the promo pay and the tips all into one thing and say, hey, this is how much we're paying our drivers. No, that's how much the total amount adds up to be. That's how much drivers are making. That's not how much you're paying. They have been known to misclassify base pays on several occasions. Also, keep in mind, DoorDash's next move, Uber Eats' next move after that, is to remove our pay knowledge entirely. You will force the adding of the tip option, then they're not going to show anything at all. They'll probably say like estimated time or whatever. It's like a frustrated stepdad who takes their anger out on their wife and their children. After a while, us drivers are going to fear the belt. So that's something that Mr. Abruz is going to need to actually take that into account, because it's one thing to try to do best for your workers, and whether or not this is actually best is up for interpretation. I know a lot of gig workers that absolutely hate it, but then there are some people who will die on a hill for it. So we'll see how this turns out after all is said and done. But in the meantime, gig workers in NYC, I hope you're enjoying your commute to Jersey City, because clearly this has not been positive in New York City at all. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. As always, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.